Well, now that we're moving out of the summer time period into September, things are starting to pick up around gaming with a lot of news flying around and rumors. And I do think now, looking at all of this, that things are about to pick up quite a bit. Like, I think things are going to get very, very interesting here soon. And I wanted to sort of go over everything happening right now, a lot of the overarching thoughts and things we can expect even this month, as it seems that Sony and maybe even Nintendo could have a hand in that, but we'll go over all of that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. So I mostly wanted to just kind of go over what we can all expect that should be happening this month, and then talk about a few things that are heavy speculation territory on this one. But to start, we do have some events that are already announced. So like Level 5, for example, is going to do their own like showcase. That's September 24th. And at this time, they've added 2 more like question marks or mystery boxes on the announcement cards. So we should see some, I guess, a couple of new game announcements there. And maybe they can surprise everyone with like a new Yokai Watch or something. So that's definitely an event you want to at least keep an eye on or be aware of. But the thing that I think a lot of people are looking towards right now is Tokyo Game Show. And I say that because a lot of other events outside of Tokyo Game Show is being influenced by that event. It's apparently like the biggest TGS that's ever happened at this time based on the number of exhibitors there. And there are quite a few, actually. Some that have not been there in years, like Sony, for example. They have not been there since 2019, but apparently they're showing up in force this year, which that actually leads us directly into the PlayStation 5 Pro stuff, as we saw Sony recently just kind of reference it in their 30th anniversary art card that they put out with all the different accessories and systems from their history. And there is the side view of what looks like the sketch D-Labs put out there ahead of time. Now, D-Labs got their information apparently from the front of a retail box they pulled from the back end of a retail listing, and it seems like they were dead on with it, which, I mean, Sony just put out that sort of outline of the PS5 Pro side panel. And so now we're expecting this thing anytime now, and based on some more stuff going around, I think we're going to see it this week coming up. Now, it's hard to say exactly which day because might be a little strange. I kind of think it's a press release. Okay, so I think it's a press release, blog post, trailer drop. I think it's basically going to be its own thing from Sony and won't be worked into a state of play, for example. I don't think they want that to be something that's alongside of other announcements. They just want to focus in on it. Here is this new piece of hardware for the enthusiast that we are introducing and then releasing, apparently, according to Insider Gaming, in November. So it will be a very quick announcement to release, and it makes sense because they are right dead center of their console life. They don't want to damage PlayStation 5 sales at all. Like, it's not like Nintendo's at the end of their Switch life. Who cares? We'll announce whenever. In this case, Sony is trying to be very careful about it, very similar to how they were with the PlayStation 4 Pro. That was announced a couple of months before it came out as well. So it's not like a full-on brand new generation, just a revision, something you can buy. It'll play the same games. Just in this case, yes, better looking, maybe better running too, I guess. Frame rate wise, hard to tell because it's still using the same CPU. But the question arises, what do they put next to it to try to sell it? Honestly, I don't know if they have to put any one game next to it. Maybe just a collage of titles, and it's just, hey, this plays those games better. And like, that's kind of it. I mean, the dream for them, I'm sure, is we have the second trailer for GTA 6 Play next to the PS5 Pro reveal, and there's a tagline at the end that says it is PS5 Pro enhanced. That's probably the best case scenario for Sony. Otherwise, they'll just rely on a lot of their first-party stuff and some more expected, we'll say, third-party stuff with different partners they worked on with the past. Oh, and my final prediction on price point is $600, no disc drive. I think you're going to have to buy that separately. So technically, if you want it with a disc drive, $680. Maybe they come in at $650 just as with the disc drive, just to have some sort of little discount, we'll say, on top of it, save you $30, I guess. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. They may not even have one that comes with the disc drive. You just might have to buy it on your own separately, and it's just a $600 digital-only system. That's kind of it. That's their way to cut down on costs and have that $599.9 mark, which, hey, they tried it with the PlayStation 3 back in 2006. We'll see how it goes for them here. Something tells me it'll go over a bit better than what they had back then. But here's the interesting thing about all of this. while we are looking towards a PlayStation 5 Pro announcement, it seems they also have a state of play lined up ahead of Tokyo Game Show. So yes, there will be 1 week where Sony has an announcement around hardware, and then another week where they have software, which you would hope so at this point. I mean, you kind of look around and go, okay, Sony, you just dropped, but I'll credit them with this because they greenlit it, everything, right? They got it to market. The best rated game of the year in Astro Bot. Phenomenal game. I've been playing it. It is awesome. So now people are looking towards them as, okay, we see that when you do sit down and you want to make a good single-player game, you can obviously do it. But there are questions around studios like one that I think would be great to have an announcement would be Sucker Punch. I mean, we believe they're doing a follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima. Seems like it would align well with Tokyo Game Show. That, I think, is a great one to have at least ahead of that event. But really at this point, you feel like they're ready to go with a number of first-party titles, which is weird that we're expecting State of Play when they may have a bunch of first-party games, because we always think of showcases as that. But I guess technically State of Play, that can just be their thing going forward, and maybe when you do a new generation, you name it a showcase as like the big pivotal event that only happens every 6 or 7 years or something like that. Look, who cares what the show is called? If they arrive with a bunch of really cool looking games, which hopefully means some of them are first party and big titles, then I don't think anyone will mind what exactly is written above the press release sheet, right? Now, the other question I have is Fair Games, because we saw what happened with Concord. Fair Games was shown to us last year in a quick cinematic trailer. Do they now come back to the table and have a release date for it, a release year, more information around the gameplay? Or do they lie low a bit with some of these live service offerings and maybe make a return with it next year when they've put Concord a bit more in the rear view mirror at that time? So maybe. Also, we need Metal Gear Delta's release date. And I say that because it originally was shown at a Sony event, right? A state of play. So I think it'd be good to have that release date soon because they still have it as 2024. And, well, it's September. But then that brings us to Tokyo Game Show, which, as I mentioned, a lot of the events in the really even Nintendo's with their August dual showcase thing where they had Indie World, and then they also had their partner showcase direct. I mean, there were a lot of games in there from, obviously, partners and third parties and stuff that are going to be most likely showcasing at Tokyo Game Show. They want to get the information out there, and they can follow up at the big trade show. But Tokyo Game Show does have a significant amount of stuff happening here. In fact, if you look at just the overall exhibitor list, I mean, it is a lot. It is quite stacked. Like, this list goes on and on and on. And yes, they even have like smartphone game area. They have gaming hardware area here. Lifestyle areas, augmented reality, esports, game academy. And yes, they also have all of the big companies that you would expect to be here, as we'll have Microsoft with a stream of some kind. It's going to be like a showcase thing, I guess, that they have. And that's telling me it's mostly going to be third parties that they have signed, maybe to Game Pass deals, or they just want to showcase. And I think that's going to be one that'll be interesting, but I don't think it's going to blow anyone away necessarily.
I guess one thing to potentially be keeping out for Microsoft that could be big would be any sort of port that would come out of their relationship with Square Enix. As we know, they are working more and more closely with them, and Square has said multiple times they're looking to expand the mainline Final Fantasy brand outside of just their PlayStation and even PC releases. So maybe Final Fantasy 16 could finally be announced here heading to the Xbox platform, or maybe Final Fantasy 7 Remake, although I would lean more towards 16 considering Remake, they're still in the midst of releasing that trilogy and getting it done, and after that is when I think we'll start hearing about some of those games going to other platforms. So for now, I would expect something like Final Fantasy 16, if anything, from that relationship with Square Enix.
But then you also have Sony, who, as I mentioned before, is going to show up here. 2019 was the last time they were here, and apparently they're going to have a pretty sizable showing on the floor here with TGS. Like 40 different demo stations at Sony's area for Monster Hunter. And then also Astro Bot will be there. But look, Monster Hunter is massive in Japan. Makes sense why Sony and Capcom would want to have a big showing here for it at Tokyo Game Show then as we go into 2025 when they are looking to, of course, release the thing. But still, you have Sony, you have Microsoft, and Nintendo's also technically going to be there. They'll be there in like the business meeting area, but you can put two and two together. I'm sure you're smart with Nintendo seemingly getting prepared to showcase for the first time their next generation device, what exactly they're doing at that business area, talking to different partners. We also do have Square Enix and Capcom. Now, I did look at the list of games they have here. This is for Square Enix, and it's nothing mind-blowing. I mean, look, Dragon Quest III, I think looks awesome. I feel like right now this is the one I'm looking towards the most out of their lineup. And I guess the one thing you could look forward to here is I'm thinking a demo. We know Square likes to do demos for a lot of their titles, but they do like to get closer to the game's release before they do that. And maybe this is still too far out. Like, this is at the end of September. Like, TGS is September 26th to the 29th. They even have like the little artwork here for it, which is cool. But they're still a month and a half out from Dragon Quest III. I feel like they would want to release the demo 2 to 3 weeks before, and maybe it has saved data that just carries over, basically giving you a head start on the game. Still, though, this is a place where there are a lot of eyes on Square Enix and some of the stuff they show up with, so maybe they at least announce that a demo is planned. Also, Fantasia Neo Dimension, I believe that still needs a release date. I think they just still say winter on it. But this is one that I'm also looking towards because it's been stuck on Apple Arcade for the longest time. Finally getting to reach a wider audience here with this release, and I do think it is completely worth picking up. Otherwise, though, Final Fantasy 16 over on PC, we have Dragon Quest Monsters 3, and very awkwardly, Visions of Mana from the studio that's pretty much been shut down. Capcom did also release their lineup, which, again, nothing crazy necessarily. These are titles that we, of course, know about, and they're going to have some kind of presentation as well. I don't know if I would go into this expecting Capcom to blow anyone away with anything substantial, but like the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, that's already going to be out by then. That's actually out in, a week and a half or something from now, so, okay. Same with Dead Rising Remastered. That's another one that's out before then, but I guess they're still just going to show up with it there for people to demo. Street Fighter 6, Monster Hunter Wilds, as I mentioned, is a really big one for them. So Capcom isn't necessarily showing up with any massive announcements, at least ones that they've announced ahead of time. Technically, there are still some surprises that they could show up with. And then we're also going to have a panel for Death Stranding 2 with Kojima and many of the developers, as well as people in the game or playing characters in the game. And it seems like they're just going to talk about the development of the title and, I guess, plans for when it's releasing, and probably some additional footage that we haven't seen yet that'll make no sense to any of us because it'll be way out of context, and Kojima will just do Kojima things. But we should get more information essentially around Death Stranding 2 and maybe what their planned roadmap is for it up to release. And of course, the thing that a lot of people are discussing right now is Nintendo kind of running out of time to announce the next system. And I say that because they themselves made us aware that by the end of March 2025, they would have announced or at least shown off their next generation system. And I don't think anyone's expecting them to wait till the final day in March to make the announcement. That was sort of just, hey, we're announcing it this fiscal year. And we know when the fiscal year ends. So it's not going on that literal sense of March 30th, we'll say 2025, here's a trailer. It could happen really at any time. And there's been this thing going around right now that they may announce it in September. I don't actually think they will. I feel like right now, if you look at everything that's happening, it does become very crowded. And I think Nintendo is more or less thinking we want to have really a nice soft spot in the schedule with really news specifically where we can just kind of drop this announcement, a trailer of some kind, get people ready to go, thinking about it, and then next year they have their typical showcase, live stream thing going over everything, and then give us their release date. So I don't think it's this month, mostly because, we're already, 7 days into the month, and it seems like Sony is going to have stuff for the next 2 weeks, and then Tokyo Game Show, where Nintendo is there doing business meetings. I actually would say it's on the other side of Tokyo Game Show.
On the other hand, maybe Nintendo would want to announce their new system ahead of Tokyo Game Show, since there are many partners that would like to talk about their big upcoming title for this new system that should be really, really popular when it releases. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people checking for it. It's going to be a very interesting thing to follow along with. And of course, if you're there earlier this time as opposed to when the Switch came out, you could set yourself up nicely for some big time sales. So I'm sure there are many third parties that are kind of like, come on, Nintendo, let's get this thing announced ahead of this big trade show. So maybe Nintendo does something just because they would like to get ahead of what will also be, I'm sure, discussions at Tokyo Game Show around their new system. Personally, I'm looking at October, somewhere in there, for them to drop a trailer just to show some stuff off. Specifically, backwards compatibility, I think, will be a big one. A couple games, what the system looks like, maybe a feature or two here or there, just to give us an idea as to the direction for the system, and then tell us we'll get more information in 2025 for this system to come out. That's kind of where I am with it, so I personally wouldn't expect much this month from Nintendo in terms of hardware, outside of apparently a new bundle. That's right, there's going to be something they'll at least set up for the holiday season, as that was shared by Bill over on Twitter, and, well, I guess we'll talk more about that in Newswave on Monday. But I do think overall it's going to be a fun 3 weeks or so here as we go through the rest of September with new game announcements, new hardware announcements, and new releases. Yeah, that's right. So games are coming out and they're actually doing well, with Astro Bot again being the most recent. So that we have like Legend of Zelda coming up. We just talked about Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, Dead Rising. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening right now, and it is starting to, again, pick up for gaming, which is good because there was definitely a summer lull, I would say, for a lot of people, but now it seems like we're back on track as we head towards the holiday season. But let me know what you guys think about this down below, with a PS5 Pro, a state of play looming, maybe Nintendo with their next hardware, and of course, the big showcase coming up soon with Tokyo Game Show and all kinds of stuff happening there. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.